In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
Our well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, am I glad to be here in front of this microphone expressing those important thoughts. And it's really wonderful to start a half an hour early today, Jose. At about 3:45, I'm jonesing so bad, I just can't wait for 4 o'clock to come. But we got an early start today.
For all those listeners who are checking their clocks, banging their wrists against the desk.
This is Tall Tales daylight saving times, right? Go ahead, Jose.
There you go. You could also be watching this on YouTube. We're streaming on Facebook. And don't forget to stay tuned in because at 5:30, the gubernatorial debate live from Canada News and also here on Facebook.
And Jose, do we want people to sign up for YouTube?
Absolutely. Sign up for YouTube, youtube.com. Search for Bob Kelly. We only Bob Klitzkie. I got two bosses, Bob K. And I think once you reach 100 subscribers, you turn into a real boy.
All right. So you can really help out Tall Tales, even if, and we like to have you watch on Facebook if you're going to do it that way, because we appreciate the comments. But even if you don't watch on YouTube, please go to YouTube, sign up, as Jose mentioned, because it helps us with, the more subscribers we have, the greater value that we have. And it would really help Tall Tales, me, and Jose, if you can do that for us. Okay, let's see what we've got as an excuse for an editorial today from the Daily News. Our view, limit gun sales to people over 21. Now, the Democrats have rewritten that, and they say, our view, limit gun sales to people over 91. Preferably people whose index finger is not strong enough to pull the trigger. For all our nation's talk about valuing life and protecting children, we fall short when it comes to shielding our young from gun violence. There's just so much to say about this, and I'm not going to just limit myself to the stuff that the Daily News dishes out here. The latest tragedy, last week's mass shooting at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, Texas, claimed the lives of 19 children and 2 adults. The gunman was a local high school student who purchased 2 assault rifles for his 18th birthday. Journalists at Education Week have been tracking the carnage since 2019. Their database lists 199 school shootings that resulted in 88 people killed and 229 injured. So far this year, 27 school shootings have taken the lives of 24 children and 3 adults. Another 86 people have been injured. Our children are used to conducting active shooter drills in classrooms. On Guam, school lockdowns happen regularly as authorities are alerted to possible weapons in schools or when gunshots are heard near schools. In 2018, a 19-year-old used a rifle purchased legally a year earlier to kill 17 people at a high school in Parkland, Florida. Just as we've become used to mass shootings at schools, we've gotten used to the idea that none of us are safe while shopping in our workplaces or in our places of worship. 2 weeks ago, an 18-year-old walked into a supermarket in Buffalo and murdered 10 black people in a racist attack. The assault weapon he used was legally purchased. While there are valid arguments for and against gun control, our response as a nation has been to maintain access to weapons with frequent pushes for greater access in the name of self-defense. Texas has more than 1 million registered firearms, just a fraction of the guns in the state, as not all firearms need to be registered under state or federal law. Yet not one of those weapons was raised to protect the children of Robb Elementary School. In fact, the Department of Justice is reviewing law enforcement's response to the shooting. Police officers reportedly stood by while the children, who were trapped with the gunman, called for help. We clearly have a problem and our solutions aren't working. In 2019, the federal government raised the age to buy tobacco products to 21. The drinking age has been 21 in the States since the 1980s and on Guam since 2010. If 18-year-olds are too young to buy alcohol or tobacco products, why can they buy assault weapons? Right now, federal law prohibits people under age 21 from buying or carrying handguns. So why is an 18-year-old allowed to purchase a semi-automatic rifle? If we're going to keep our children safe from gun violence, a good place to start would be limiting gun sales to people over the age of 21. Well, there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start out with the obligatory use of the term assault rifles. Finally, at the end of the story, they got around to using the phrase a semi-automatic weapon. What people nowadays call an assault rifle, an AR-15 or something that looks like an AR-15, is a semi-automatic weapon. A semi-automatic weapon means you pull the trigger and one fires. You pull it again and another one fires. It's not an automatic weapon, which means that you pull the trigger and hold it and the gun keeps firing. So I don't know, other than their menacing appearance, why a AR-15 style rifle is any more dangerous than any other semi-automatic, because they both have the same rate of fire and the same ability to deliver lead to the target, so to speak.
And there are actually more powerful weapons out there with bigger calibers than this AR-15.
That's right. The AR-15 fires like a .223 round or something, a very small round, yeah. Not much bigger than the .22 rifle that my dad bought me when I was 11 years old.
And just to be clear for those people out there gnashing their teeth, this factual commentary on the description of rifles is in no way a commentary on the shooting that happened in Texas.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. We'll get to that later on when someone, a racist, reads the racist element into it.
But it's important to have a foundation of truth before we start to opine, right?
Exactly. Although the left hardly ever does that. The second thing I want to talk about is 21. When I was a youngster, this one strains credibility to think that I was ever a youngster, but I didn't turn 21 until December of 1959. Born in December. What a handicap. A lot of my friends, Tim and Buck, Tim and Jerry were tooling around in January and February of our sophomore years in their cars. I couldn't drive till I was, halfway through my junior year. But, at least I was born, I got to say that, yeah. But, back in those days, you couldn't do anything you couldn't vote if you weren't 21. If you wanted to buy an automobile, you couldn't enter into contracts because you were still a child in the eyes of the law. You'd have to have one of your parents sign up for you. You couldn't enlist. You could enlist in the armed forces at 18, but not at 17. So basically, you weren't recognized as an adult until you were 21. Now, I've been 21, and I've been 17, 18, 19, 20. I've had experience, and believe me, people aren't ready for adult experience until they're 21. There's just no getaway, no other way to slice it. But what happened was we sent a lot of teenagers off to Vietnam. Some draftees, some who enlisted, and a lot of them got killed. And a lot of them were teenagers, 18, 19, 17, 18, 19, under 21. So we got this bright idea, well, you know, if they're old enough to fight, then by God, they're old enough to go into a bar and drink a beer too. And if they're old enough to fight, they're old enough to vote. So we tried to do it statutorily. It didn't work. We amended the Constitution to give the vote to everyone who was under 21. We tried the experiment with 18-year-olds in the bars. That was before I stopped drinking, and go back to my hometown and talk to a couple of my old friends who were tavern keepers, and they said, please put it back to 21. You know, these 18, 19-year-olds come in, we have to serve them, but they don't know how to behave in a bar. Get them out of here. So finally we decided that it was too dangerous to allow people under 21 to drink. And the federal government, the national government, what am I talking about? The national government bribed the states into raising their drinking ages back to 21. We'll give you highway funds if you increase your drinking age to 21. If you don't, we'll take it away from you. So now all of the states went back to 21. The wrong way to do it, but the right thing to do. So we're making a mistake there. Now, my analysis is that the people that do this, and of course, it's not like the SUV in Waukesha. We can't blame the SUV for plowing into the pre-Christmas crowd and killing 9 people and injuring 20 more. We have an awful lot of maladjusted people running around in our country. And I've talked about this before. I haven't seen statistics lately, but before I've seen statistics that there was a pattern. These kids all grew up they're all white, they're all young, they all grew up without fathers, they were all social misfits. A lot of them played video games. So if you're a 21-year-old misfit playing video games who grew up with a father, well, then maybe we'll let you take a crack at it. It just is not the way to go. We have serious societal problems, and changing the law, as per this editorial, is going to make some people feel good. It's going to be a good political selling point because, well, we did something. We raised the age to 21. I suspect it won't be very effective. Okay, we've already got somebody in the green room trying to get on the phone here. That would be somebody who didn't want to get on the phone.
They just wanted to make a point that, to your point about semi-automatics and the foundation of this limiting AR-15 style rifles. This person talked about his experience in the jungle when he was serving, how I believe a CEO or somebody who was in charge would carry a shotgun with them rather than their semi-automatic because it was more lethal.
Sure.
And so there are, not to say that the AR-15 is not lethal, but we want to put this in perspective. Don't limit yourself to just your own knowledge. Do some research first before you call upon legislation that really doesn't do anything.
And of course, there is a political dimension here. You know, the lefties, the Democrats make a lot of those assault weapons are designed for only one thing, and that is to kill. And the gun manufacturers are making huge profits off of assault rifles. So we got to shut all this down, close down the companies that make rifles, tax the hell out of them, send the ban the NRA, etc., the whole thing. Okay, I got a lot of lights going on in my green room here. Maybe I got some folks on the line this time. Well, let's see. Is it Pete or Dick this time, Jose? It's Dick. Pete, repeat? Okay. Good afternoon, repeat. Are you
I
there?
had to suffer through the long weekend, but here we are.
Yes, sir. And we made it, repeat, didn't we?
Yeah, no, I wanted to make a point about the whole proposal to change the law. You know, a lot of people pose the question like, well, what's the justification for an 18-year-old to have an assault rifle? And, you know, that is not how civil rights work. In order for the government to deprive or restrict your rights, the government has to prove why they need to do it. It's not the individual who needs to prove why he should be able to exercise his rights. I mean, what's next? We have to prove that we should be able to speak freely. We have to prove that we should be able to enjoy not having, you know, random searches without a search warrant in our homes. So the question is back asswards, if you are familiar with that term.
I'm familiar with bass backwards, yeah.
Yes. So anyways, the mindset of some people, you know, posing the question of what justification do you have to have as an 18-year-old to have a rifle or an assault rifle or any kind of firearm for that matter. That's not how civil rights works.
A well-stated point there, Dick. I mean, Peter. Yeah, and when it comes to guns, size does matter, doesn't it?
Oh yes. How far you are from the target.
Okay, good talking to you, Pete. Glad you're back. Okay, next I've got R. Keith, followed by another Joe. R. Keith wants to talk about the Second Amendment. Another Joe wants to talk about who is responsible. Go ahead, R. Keith.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. This is such a target-rich environment, and as usual, the political left, their quote-unquote solutions do not solve a problem. They simply are window dressing to show the uninformed that we are doing something. It doesn't really matter if it actually tackles the problem or not. The late Rush Limbaugh, may he rest in peace, for many, many, many years used to restate the phrase symbolism over substance. And he really did call it well. Which, you know, what I'd really love to hear is a pointed question to one of the gun control types. Which law would you like to see that would have prevented this? Because there's already however many laws in the books. None of them are stopping anything. But one of the big, you know, there seems to be, as you indicated on a little earlier, there's patterns here. And why is, well, I mean, I know why, but these are fatherless kids. They're malcontents. Sometimes they're bullied. An awful lot of them are on antidepressants. Awful lot of them. Video game nuts, loners. They are known to law enforcement. There are all sorts of red flags and indicators, but nobody does a thing about it. And then when it happens, everyone walks around like, oh, how can we prevent this? Well, how about employing a little critical thinking and acting on all of the wealth of evidence that's been out there prior to all these shootings and enforcing the laws we have? No. If someone has a history of behavior problems, is on behavior modification, therapy, SSRIs, no, you don't give them a gun. The average sane human being does not go out and shoot up a school. But they're not interested in that. The left isn't interested in that. They're interested in taking away the guns from everybody. They're not interested in solving the problem. Anyway, that was my rant. Thoughts?
Well, I can't say that I disagree with anything you said. As usual, Arcade, you usually are pretty. You know, if you come to the show with a rifle, you've sighted it in before you ever step to the line.
You know, what will be interesting is, in fact, I really need to print it out, and then one of these days I'll read it. What would happen if the same type of argument were employed against abortions? I'm sorry, you need a waiting period. You need federal registration. You're only allowed to have one abortion. Let's see what will be said.
Yeah, and if unfortunately, if you add up the death toll, which is more dangerous, assault weapons or abortion, it's no contest.
And speaking of that, did you know that more people were killed with hammers last year than AR-15s?
I'm not surprised. Hammers can be pretty deadly weapons in the hands of the wrong people, and that of course is where the focus has to be, is on people who have these tendencies.
If you look at Britain, the UK, they have reasonably strict gun laws, and it's, you know, going to a number of forums, I find myself debating such topics with them, and they love to point to America's quote gun problem unquote. If you take a good read through UK newspapers, they have a serious nice problem. Further, they have people attacking each other in the street with machetes and throwing bottles of acid at one another. So fine, you got rid of the guns, but it's not the inanimate object. They just found something else to kill and hurt and maim people with. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, well, good points all, Keith. And Jose chimes in here on Facebook, identifying assault hammers.
Yes. I'll see if I can't find a picture of one.
All right. Thanks for calling, Keith. Okay, and then let's see. We've got another Joe who wants to chime in. Go ahead, another Joe.
Look, well, so I think in the past they've said that they don't want the media, that is, they don't want to give too much credit to the shooter, so they don't talk much about the shooter. And there's the issue of Democrats like to say that the problem is with the gun, but of course we all know that the gun is only lethal when it's used by someone who uses it in a lethal way. So regarding the issue of, I'm trying to get stage fright for some reason. The issue is, should we be talking about the background of the shooter? And because I've heard stuff, I don't know, it hasn't been verified that the shooter was harassed because some sort of impairment, and then he couldn't turn to anyone in particular in his immediate family because they seem to all have their own problems. But what then would be a solution with something like that? Right now, you got these advocacy programs, like suicide advocacy programs. Well, what do you do with someone who is not necessarily looking to commit suicide, but they're thinking of doing harm to others who they want to blame for, the way they feel they've been treated? Not like you said, not to condone or to justify anything that this individual has done, because everyone should be responsible for their actions, which is exactly the point. Look, Bob, we should be emphasizing that everyone is responsible for their actions. And the other thing is that with the Democrat majority in the Congress, they blocked just about every solution that Republicans have attempted to address. I think they're saying, like, for example, secure the building. Why did they not look to secure the building? All these suggestions that were given, I don't know how many years before, were not implemented. So I don't know how you feel about that, Bob.
Well, I hear watching TV, et cetera, well, we ought to put this kind of a door on schools, and we ought to have armed security officers there, et cetera. And I hear what they're saying, but are we going to create another really grave situation for our children by hardening the school so it's as hard to get into a school as it is to the airport? What does that do to the psyche of a young child who ought to look forward to going to school rather than seeing it as entering some kind of a place where his bag is going to be searched and all the rest of that stuff? I just don't think that is going to work very well. I think we have to zero in on the folks, on our society, and try to make the necessary changes so that we don't have these people who just don't fit in.
Okay, and those changes would you say they've already been suggested by Republicans in Congress, or?
Well, it's kind of like my old saw. It's not what we're doing, it's what we're not doing, or maybe the other way around, what we shouldn't be doing. Because what we've done in our society here, we've diminished the role of the father to the point where an awful lot of the femme libbers will tell you don't need a father in a family. 2 women are much better at raising a child than 1 man. We have so depreciated the role of the father. And as I mentioned earlier, an awful lot of these shooters are kids that were raised without fathers, raised in homes without any kind of a male figure, male discipline, etc. How many female shooters have we had? None. Why is that? And that's a part of it. And then in our society, we've so denigrated the role of the man and the father. All this talk about toxic masculinity and blurring the lines between the sexes and saying, Herman can marry Henry, he doesn't need to marry Henrietta. I see all of these things as precursors to these disaffected youth that do incredibly violent things, probably without having much understanding themselves as to why they're doing it. That's my amateur psychology look at it, another Joe.
It's a good start for everyone to think about and also debate for and against. Okay, Bob, thanks for your time. I'll just keep listening.
Good talking to you, another Joe. Okay, so it's 2 minutes to 4. What time is that, Jose? What time is it? Would it really be almost 4:30, right?
Almost 4:30, yeah.
About time for us to take. Well, too early to take a break if we got a news.
Got about another minute to go.
A hard break in another minute. Okay. Well, I'll just once again flesh out my ideas there. That that there was a time in our society when these things were just unheard of. Going all the way back to a guy named Charles Whitman, who I believe it was in 1962, climbed what's called a Texas Tower on the University of Texas campus with an M1 rifle and probably 100 rounds of ammunition, and sat up there and picked off about 30 students. And this was just such a tragedy. And, of course, Charles Whitman had a screw loose, and everyone thought it was terrible. We didn't really think that it was necessary to do anything because there weren't that many Charles Whitmans roaming around. Now it seems like there's a Charles Whitman in every school district just waiting for the opportunity to come forward and distinguish himself. So this idea of locking the school doors and having everybody do a brain scan before he can buy a gun, I don't think is going to work. All right, let's take a short break, and I'll come back to R. James.
Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Honoring America's war dead. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Biden at the Arlington National Cemetery Monday, paying tribute to those who made the ultimate sacrifice.
In what he called a sacred Memorial Day ritual.
We must never betray the lives laid down to make our nation a beacon to the world, a citadel of liberty and justice for everyone.
Biden marked the importance of defending democracy amid Russia's war in Ukraine. Also mourned alongside Gold Star families on the anniversary of his son Beau's death, a veteran who died of brain cancer. Biden addressed the families of the 2,461 service members who lost their lives in Afghanistan, but made no specific mention of the 13 who died under his watch during the withdrawal.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. The president on Monday also taking aim at 9mm handguns, appearing to suggest that high-caliber weapons ought to be banned, saying there's simply no rational basis for them in terms of self-protection and hunting. Adding, remember, the Constitution was never absolute. Canada's Prime Minister Justin Trudeau proposing legislation that would essentially ban handguns in Canada.
In addition to a national freeze on handgun imports, purchases, and sales, it also allows for the removal of gun licenses from people involved in domestic violence or criminal harassment. It also includes a red flag law, allowing courts to order people considered a danger to themselves or others to surrender their firearms. In addition, no rifle magazines capable of holding more than 5 rounds of ammunition would be allowed, and high-capacity magazines would be banned.
Fox's Rich Dennison reports the legislation would create a mandatory buyback program for so-called assault weapons in Canada. Parts of Omaha, Nebraska evacuated Monday night as clouds of thick black smoke billowed from a factory that makes chemicals for the concrete industry. There were fears the smoke could be toxic. Cause of that fire, not known yet. America is listening to Fox News.
Candid News Group and The Point present Platform 2022, the gubernatorial debate, hosted by Phil Leon Guerrero and Montecillo Tyrant, May 31st at 5:30 everywhere. Live streamed on Candid, live on 93.3 thepoint.gu, Facebook. Former Governor Felix P. Camacho, Congressman Mike Sinicolas, and Governor Lou Leon Guerrero.
Brought to you by the Committee to Re-elect Leon Guerrero Tenorio and by Linda's Diner.
Hafaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
European Union nations finally agree on an embargo of Russian oil.
The embargo's intent is to affect up to 2/3 of oil imports from Russia to EU nations. It's described as partial because only oil arriving by sea is affected. Oil brought in by pipeline is temporarily exempt. The agreement is slow in coming because of Hungary's objection. Hungary gets a majority of its oil from Russia, and Prime Minister Viktor Orban wouldn't sign on unless that supply was guaranteed. That impasse was referenced by Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky in a video urging the EU to put aside differences. 5 earlier rounds of sanctions have targeted banks, oligarchs, and Vladimir Putin himself. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Crude oil prices rising on that news. West Texas Intermediate trading above $118 a barrel. EU leaders are now gathering for a second day of their summit meeting in Brussels. President Biden meets today with Fed Chair Jerome Powell to discuss inflation and economic recovery. The president will also hold a bilateral meeting with New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern. Jury deliberations resumed Tuesday in the trial of former Clinton campaign attorney Michael Sussman, accused of lying to the FBI about his motivation for bringing them information about the Trump campaign, which the FBI later found to be baseless. Residents in Laredo, Minnesota spent the holiday Monday picking up after severe storms damaged 75 structures in the town. Mayor David Reller.
The whole landscape's changed, and there's going to be a lot of construction contractors working in this area for probably at least another year or 2 years, trying to get everybody back to where they can live here. It's just heart-wrenching.
I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The
Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Brothers put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension System, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
Welcome back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, Guam's single voice of reason. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So here we go after a short break, and now we've got R. James. Good afternoon, R. James.
Afternoon, Bob. I totally agree with you about the admonishment of the father role. And I'm going to go about this point of view, totally, completely my own opinion, from a couple of different directions, and I think you'll appreciate all of them, especially a couple of the legal facts that I'm going to point out here. Number one, an AR-15, or as they're now saying, an AR-15 type, because they don't want to just go after the AR-15. They want to go after anything that's even close to it, is not an assault rifle. The actual definition of an assault rifle is a subcaliber weapon that has select fire capability, i.e. an M4 or an M16. An AR-15 is, and it is listed as a civilian semi-automatic rifle. It is not an assault weapon. Okay? So all of these highly educated political people, and many of them who have law degrees, they need to A, get their facts straight, and B, they need to stop pushing a bad narrative. Okay, now that we understand the difference between an assault rifle and a civilian semi-automatic rifle, because the NFA, the National Firearms Act of 1934, made it illegal to own a fully automatic weapon that was not registered with the national government. The Gun Control Act of 1968 and the further ban on automatic weapons of 1984 made it illegal to manufacture, sell, or even transfer a fully automatic weapon after that date. Okay, so we don't have any assault rifles being legally manufactured, sold, and transferred. Okay, with that being said, we have laws on the books for decades now that if they were properly implemented and carried out, I believe would stop a large majority of not just the mass shootings, but the crime in general that we have, okay? They're talking about red flag laws, red flag laws, red flag laws. Okay, there's already laws on the books in almost every one of the states that if you report a person whom you believe to be a danger to themselves or to the general public at large, the police have the authority to go in and bring that person in for a psychiatric evaluation. And if they are found to be a possible potential risk, not only to themselves, but to the general public, if they own firearms, they already have a mechanism to be able to say, okay, look, we're going to confiscate these firearms until such time as you undergo a thorough psychiatric evaluation. And we have a psychiatric evaluation on file that says that, yes, you're a problem, you're a potential risk to yourself and others, and you need further psychiatric help. Or no, you just made an offhand comment someplace that somebody heard and took it the wrong way, and no, you're not crazy. We already have those laws on the books. So I'm not really a proliferant of the quote-unquote red flag laws, because I can see that being sorely misused, okay, sorely to the point where a girlfriend gets mad at her boyfriend over something, or he has an affair, or he gets caught cheating, and she calls the police and says, oh, yeah, he said he was going to kill everybody, and he's got a bunch of guns in the house. Okay, we've already had a couple of situations on the books. These are actual on-the-book situations where people have reported someone, okay, and they went in and they confiscated personally owned property, okay, on, I don't want to, well, it's a lie, you know, when you say, oh, well, no, he's not really dangerous, but he owed me money and he didn't pay me, so I wanted to get him back, okay? Or my boyfriend broke up with me and I wanted to get even with him. Okay, that's the kind of malicious things that we're going to get into with these red flag laws, because, and I'm sorry, Bob, you'll have to correct me. I can't say I'm having a CRS brain fart day. I can't remember the term where they can go in and they can have a hearing in front of a judge, but it's not public knowledge, and the person that potential would affect is not invited to be there to defend himself. What is that called?
Well, you're probably talking about an ex parte hearing.
Correct, an ex parte hearing. When you don't have the ability to go in and stand, I mean, look, you're not a drug cartel. You're not suspected of moving tons of drugs across the border, et cetera, and you don't want to tip them off and let them know that they're being investigated. We're talking about an actionable confiscation of personally owned property against a citizen of the United States. And when you don't have the ability to go in and have representation for yourself or represent yourself, this can be a very, very dangerous thing, in my opinion. Okay? So what it all boils down to, and I know many years ago, a number of years ago, it was brought up in some congressional hearings about the effect of these video games on kids, okay? There was a lot of money thrown at it. There was advocates that came in from, Activision and all these companies that make these video games like Call of Duty and Modern Warfare and all this stuff. I'm sorry, I'm just not going to buy that you can sit a child down in front of a TV with a video game to take the place of a father, and even in some cases the place of a mother, as a babysitter for hours and hours every day for years of their lives during the most impressionable time that they're growing up and supposed to have tutelage and learning and contact from parents and people that have, as my great-grandmother used to say, enough common sense to fill a thimble. You know, when I was a kid, we sat down in front of the TV and we watched TV for 30 or 45 minutes, and then our mother made us get out of the house and go do something. Now, I understand that might not always be an answer, but she would walk through the room, or my dad would walk through the room, and they'd say, well, wait a minute. You kids understand that when the Roadrunner and the Coyote are on the TV and the coyote gets run over by the truck or falls off the cliff or gets blown up by the Acme dynamite rocket or whatever, you understand that that's fiction. That's not real, because they get blown up, and then the next cartoon is another cartoon, and the coyote is back again, and he's okay. If you walk out in the street in front of a truck, you're not going to be okay. If you climb up on the roof of the house and you fall off, you're going to get hurt. My parents used to stop and have conversations with us and say, hey, you do understand that this is not real, that if this happens to you, that you're going to get hurt very badly or you're going to die, okay? We had parents that told us things like that. And Bob, you're a little bit older than I am, but, we grew up, we had bottle rocket fights, and we used to shoot Roman candles at each other, and we used to ride bicycles and stuff with no helmet and no pads, and we got spankings. We got our butts lifted off the floor with belts and switches, and if you messed up at school and you played sports, they sent you to go see the coach, and the coach would bring your heels off the floor several inches, okay? We didn't grow up to be mass murderers. We didn't grow up to be hardened criminals, okay? We don't have proper parenting. We don't have proper disciplining, okay? And then we let these kids sit down in front of these video games for hours at a time where they just shoot and shoot and shoot, and it marginalizes human life. And they can get up there and they can throw hundreds and millions of dollars of lobbyist money at our politicians and say, oh, no, we had this, we did this survey, and no, there's not anything wrong with kids playing these totally violent games and yada, yada, yada. But here's the one thing. We didn't have mass shootings when we were kids, but now we do. What has changed from then until now? No parenting, not a good family relation, too many violent video games, and not taking the warning signs that are called in. Most of these mass shooters that have happened, at least in the last several years, that I've been really been following there were lots of signs. They were that not one, not two, multiple different people, not the same person, calling in saying, hey, something's not right about this guy. You guys should really check him out because he's acting strange. He's talking violently. You guys should come and check this person out because something's not right here. We're kind of afraid to have this guy living on our block, was the way most of these phone calls go. And we have a catch and release and a revolving door policy that puts these people right back out on the street. Okay? They want to fix the problem. Those are the problems. Because we didn't used to have these kind of problems. Family used to take care of family. Family didn't just push everybody off to the side and send them to the old folks' home or to the mental institution. Family used to take care of family, but we don't have that anymore. And that's the difference between then and now, and the reason why we didn't have mass shootings then, and the reason why we're having mass shootings now. They can slice it, dice it, fry it any way they want to. They can throw all the lobby money to say, oh, we did a survey. That's not the problem. But you have to look at the facts, and these are the facts. That's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it because, and Bob, you understand from the legal standpoint, from your law experience, if you arrest someone and you give them a slap on the wrist and you say, don't do that again, and you put them back out on the street on a PR bond or something that's a very insignificant bond, that just emboldens them to do it again. It just makes them feel more confident as a criminal, and they start to graduate from the petty crime to the not-so-petty crime to the crimes against persons where they actively know that they're going to break into a home or they're going to walk into a convenience store with a weapon, and it doesn't make any difference what that weapon is. They're going to commit that crime. They have predisposed themselves to the point that they're going to do it anyway, no matter what, because A, they probably won't get caught, and B, if they do get caught, they're going to be back out on the street in nothing flat. And then C, if they do actually spend some time, well, hey, they got 3 squares a day. It's heated in the wintertime. It's cool in the summer. They get conjugal visits. They got the rec room. They've got cable TV. You know, I like the sheriff in Arizona that made them wear pink jumpsuits and live in military tents like we used to have to. Well, not the pink jumpsuit part. But these are the things that they need to fix if they want to fix the problem. And if they don't want to fix the problem, then don't come and tell me that I have to give up my birthright as a United States citizen to my Constitution, because I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I opt out. I do not comply. And that's going to be the bottom line when it finally comes. And I didn't think I'd live long enough to see it, but I think I probably will live to see it now, because they're going to keep putting more money into the lobbyists. And they're trying, it's all about the control. They don't really want to fix the problem. They just want to say, okay, eventually we're just going to take all the firearms like they did in the United Kingdom, and then the crime's not going to go down. The crime's actually going to go up. Crimes against person are going to rise 30 to 40%, just like they did in the UK. And now they're talking about having to register a set of steak knives in the UK because knife crime is so high. Well, if they take the knives away, then they're going to go and they're going to get a rock. Okay? And if they take away the rocks, then they're going to go get a club. And then they're going to have to take away the trees. I mean, Bob, you see where I'm going with this. They're not fixing the problem. They're just trying to make themselves look good and put Band-Aids on the issues. That's my opinion.
Well, you've given us an awful lot to chew on here, James. Thank you very much for calling in. I've got Matt, who wants to talk about laws to protect kids, Guam versus mainland. Tell us about it, Matt.
How you guys doing?
Fine.
Oh, good. Thanks for having me on. I don't agree with that last guy, just about, more discipline, and, it doesn't quite make sense, but I'm concerned with mass shootings just like everybody else. People have the right to own weapons. I don't own a weapon. I can't afford one, to tell you the truth. Milk's too expensive. But living on Guam, living here a few years ago, I always wonder when these unfortunate situations occur, and it seems to reoccur, is there any laws here on a territory of the United States that are any different than the mainland? Because, there's obviously politics with gun control that the last caller spelled out. But I have a first grader, so, how is Guam keeping our kids safe? And is the laws here any different than the mainland? I mean, there's less people here on a small island in the West Pacific, so there's maybe less weapons. I don't know. There's also a military presence, obviously, but, your show often talks about the pros and cons of statehood or independence or continuing as a territory. But is there any difference in the gun laws here versus the mainland that may keep our kids safe?
We have probably the strictest gun law under the American flag. And it may go all the way back to the Naval Administration. But unless you have a firearms ID, just picking up and holding a pistol in your hand is a third degree felony. So, but I don't know that it has really any impact on the kind of malady that we're talking about. I'm only aware of one incident where someone came into a public place and killed somebody. And that was at the Seventh-day Adventist Clinic about 10 years ago. And that was a lover's quarrel, basically. And it's unfortunate those things happen. I don't know that there would ever be any way of stopping them. I think the major difference between here and the United States, in many jurisdictions in the mainland, is that there is very little anonymity here on the island. It's pretty hard to stay under the radar if you live here. People are going to know who you are, what you're about, what you're like, etc. And because of that, there's sort of a standard of conduct that society sets. This is my analysis, that society sets that's independent of the society, of the standard set by the law. Whereas in an awful lot of mainland jurisdictions, you don't have that. And then, of course, I've got to drag out my traditional bugaboo, which is cultural Marxism and neo-Marxism. What happened in the mainland in the 1960s, we took all of our conventions, morals, attitudes, culture, and threw them all away and came out with something totally different. And in the process, we really tore down the society that we had. And in the process, I think, tore down a lot of the safeguards that we wish we had now, but we're not going to get them back. That didn't happen here. You know, the year 1961 occurred on Guam, and we went all the way up through 1973, which was actually the end of the 60s, but we didn't have the same sense of anarchy here that we did in the mainland, and I think we probably escaped a really serious problem because of that. That's my analysis, Matt.
That's great. So those are some things that maybe, what can we draw upon as a smaller population in the Western Pacific that, may help the situation on the mainland? I mean, there's less people, there's less guns, and like you mentioned, everybody knows everybody and what they're doing, but how do we translate that into some sort of solution? Obviously, people are entrenched in their sides in some of these big issues like gun control and abortion, and it's very hard to change somebody's mind, but we all agree that, a school shooting is a horrible thing. So what can we draw upon from our tiny little island here in the Western Pacific that maybe the mainland could learn about?
Well, maybe if we could grab some media attention, we could advertise things like Inafamalik and some of the Respecto and some of the older virtues that some of the old timers here are saying we're losing. Reach out, hang on to them, and tell the folks in the mainland, hey, these are some things you might want to think about, guys.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate the dialogue of your show. Look forward to it every day.
Well, I'm glad you called in, Matt. You're a tailgater, right?
That's right.
That's for you. So long, Matt. Okay, Matt the tailgater. So where are we? Seventh inning stretch? Not yet. I can't remember. I can't tell where we are, Jose. Time for a break, huh? All right, let's take a short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
We're already Pika's best radio station, but we're always looking for ways to be even better. Announcing The Point on Alexa. In addition to our FM and HD radio feeds, our incredible app, informative website, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, you can now tell Alexa to stream The Point. And your smart speaker will start playing whatever we're saying. News and views 24/7 with your 4-word command. Alexa, stream The Point.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So here we are, back on the air again at 4:30 but it's actually really 5 o'clock, according to Tall Tales time. Bonnie Suba makes a good point that I kind of forgot when I was describing what I thought some solutions were. Bonnie said maybe if you bring God into all things, you would be surprised of what he will do. And certainly the deterioration of religiosity in the United States plays a real strong role here. Church membership has gone way, way down in the last 50 years. And whether you're a devout Catholic or an alien, as you were an atheist, if you study it, you understand that religion is a tremendous form of social control. And if the social controls are based on sound premises, it's all for the better. But we've gone out of our way to denigrate the role of religion in our communities. And, you know, and unfortunately, I hate to say this, but some rather large chickens are coming home to roost. Okay.
Real quick, Bob, before we get to the next caller, another caller had wanted to make a point going to laws protecting the Second Amendment also about an event that happened in 1870, Wounded Knee. Mm-hmm. If you recall that, I'm not too familiar. I know that there was a recall of weapons, right? And was it the Dakota or the Lakota Indians?
Yeah, it seems.
And then
right.
after that happened, there was a massacre that occurred. But I don't know what the whole story was, and was wondering if you can recall that.
I don't either.
Okay.
Maybe you could call us up and eliminate us. Huh? Okay. Next on the line, I've got Frenchie who wants to talk about the Second Amendment. Go ahead, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Robert. Good to have you back after a long weekend.
It was long.
Yeah, it was long. Yeah, I was thinking you could put pieces of the YouTube program, some of the things you were pushing, and play them on those days where you guys are not live. But anyhow, talking
the best
about
of Tall Tales.
Yeah, the best of Tall Tales, something like that. Just a little bit what they do on Fox when their anchors are not there. So, Second Amendment, I think, is just the tip of the iceberg. I think what we have and what we are seeing is an attempt by politicians and some oligarch here in the U.S., and I'm using the word oligarch on purpose because that's what they have become. People like Bloomberg, Bill Gates and his vaccines, Bezos and his medias, and George Soros with his NGOs. They are basically trying to import into the United States, and with some success, I'm afraid to say, the theory of chaos that our intelligence agencies have applied throughout the Middle East and are trying to apply inside Ukraine, which is a theory that was developed by Dr. Strauss, who was a German-American at the University of Chicago, which says that in order to control the economy, you need to create chaos around you. That way you can get the best results. And what we are seeing, if you look since the selection of President Biden, you see all the policies about immigration, which are basically not to enforce the existing laws. You see since the 2020 summer of violence, which was meant to get rid of Trump, the selective DA and attorney generals who have been selected by George Soros and backed up by tremendous amount of money to not enforce gun laws, to not enforce violent crime prosecution, creates an environment of insecurity. You know, Biden went to Buffalo and to Texas, but then when is he going to go to Chicago or Baltimore, Chicago had over 40 people killed shot over the weekend. I think 6 of them died, and several of them are still in critical position. This has been going on weeks after weeks after weeks, and the media never talks about it. There is a slaughter of minority children by other minority children in some of the most gun control states in the nation. We're talking Illinois, Maryland, California, all those states, and New York that have already very, very starch gun laws, which have absolutely no impact on the criminals, just has an impact on the law-abiding citizens that are trying to have guns for either the protection, for sports, for shooting, whatever their legal reasons are. Those people, actually, gun owners are the smallest percentage of people that commit crime, and that includes vehicular crimes. It's the lowest part of the population that commits crime. The people that commit crime are usually gang members. And so what we are arriving, if you put that refusal to enforce gun laws, the politicians trying to do confiscation, because that's what they want to do. The president was talking about common sense gun control, and if you look at the so-called common sense gun control initiative from the Democrat, they are neither common sense, because they show their total absolute ignorance about guns, and they are not gun control. They don't control anything. They just make you feel good. But what it does is that it takes away the legal rights of people to own arms and to use them in a legal way. So you take that, you take the lack of law enforcement, you take open borders, which have been where basically the federal government of Mr. Biden is refusing to enforce existing law, and then you take the artificial inflation that is being put in place, which you see all those eco-terrorists that are gleeful about the price of diesel reaching the highs that we are, not understanding how he has an impact on the food chain and everything. It was very interesting that the French president and the German chancellor both had a conference call with Putin. And Putin actually lectured them and said, you know, you guys need to start. This crisis that we have now has nothing to do with us in Ukraine. This crisis is due to your failed energy policies that you have pushed on Europe and the rest of the Western world that is extremely expensive. So don't come and blame us now because there is a dip in the production of oil and gas. We have nothing to do with it. You do not want to buy our oil and gas. That's your choice, but don't come and blame us. So the other thing that we see, and we've seen it in Texas with that latest shooting, is the destruction of the good image of law enforcement, and we started seeing that with the Black Lives Matter and all those things, making the cops the bad guys, making the cops think 3-4 times before they use their sidearm in order to defend themselves or defend the citizenry that is in danger, like it was in Texas. They basically didn't react. So you have the elimination of cash transaction, the blind eye about drug dealing, especially this administration. We are having fentanyl flowing over the borders. They are not doing anything. And human trafficking. If you put all that, you have the recipe for us becoming a new Ukraine, because Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. It's the highest sexual trafficking in Europe and the highest drug trade in Europe. It's a plaque tournante, like they say at the DEA. And the destruction of our Second Amendment is just one small phase, because we are lucky that unlike Europe, Canada, or Australia, we have the Second Amendment that still protects us. I understand the Supreme Court is supposed to rule very soon, maybe today or tomorrow, about the New York case. So we'll know if we know we can have guns, we'll know if we'll be able to bear them, but it will be interesting. And right now, if you see all that combination, it's taking away the local force, police force enforcement, not enforcing the law, bringing drugs, bringing trafficked people, and basically imposing now a national government, federal police that will be able to only answer to the government. And when you see under the guise of the pandemic what they did in the armed forces and the law enforcement and also the fire department, where they basically got rid of all the patriots, all the Christians that didn't want to get vaccinated, it was a way to purify, as they see it, the law enforcement and the armed forces from the real patriots and the people that want to follow the Constitution. So we have a very, very high hill to climb here, because you have billionaires with very deep pockets that are willing to finance those DAs and so on. They are willing to use NGOs as political action committees, and they have an agenda. Their agenda is creating chaos in the United States. We have people from the United States trying to destroy the country, going after the Second Amendment, allowing mass murder through abortions. Those are tools to destroy the countries, to create chaos. And this is where we're going if we are not stopping it. And that's why they had to get rid of Trump, because Trump was America's first. He might not be able to rationalize it in a philosophical way, but in his strange way of speaking, he was able to tell people, look, they're making you poorer, they're destroying the middle class, they're taking away all your rights, and this is exactly what they do. If you're able in a country to go after a sitting president the way they did, they're creating chaos. They were doing a continuous coup d'etat against an elected official, and nobody is doing it. And this is facilitated by the media, because the media are guilty of sin by omission. And that's what they do. They omit a lot of the news, and they only highlight what those world leaders want us to do. And this is everything that you said earlier, and the other callers is absolutely true. But you need to look at it in a macro way, to look that those people have an agenda, and their agenda is to destroy the U.S. the way we know it and the way we know it works well. They have something in their mind. They don't mind having their companies located in Asia. They don't care if the New York stock market tomorrow tumbles and they have to go to Hong Kong. It doesn't matter to those people. They will keep on getting richer, and they have during the pandemic. Billionaires have almost tripled their worth, while the middle class has almost disappeared. And getting rid of Second Amendment is one part of that agenda, and we have to be very careful and not elect people that are willing to give away our rights in exchange for a fake security, because that's all what it is.
Well, once again, Francia, you really nailed it down for us. Thank you very much for a very complete and incisive explanation. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Yeah, that's our friend Frenchie. One thing about Frenchie, whatever subject he's speaking about, he never offends silence. Yeah, so here we are. Where are we? 4:45, which would be the same thing as
4:45.
4:45.
Well, we can take a break here, and then when we come back after the news, we can go into the seventh inning stretch.
So it's time for the seventh inning stretch.
Not yet. We have 15 more minutes.
What about the big halftime show, Jose?
That already. Oh,
big halftime show's got to come at 5.
Yeah, that should have happened at 4. Yeah, I don't know.
So let's do seventh inning stretch now, and then the big halftime show at 5.
Let's do that. Okay.
Yeah, so here we are at Wrigley Field in Chicago, the world's most beautiful ballpark. That means I've only got 2 more innings to go. And while we were on break here, I peeked at a comment from Lanny Salas, who said, "Yes, Frenchie, the agenda is to destroy America." And that's exactly what's happening. And an awful lot of the destroyers are people who live in America. I've gone on this rant myself about the Frankfurt School back in 1922, Antonio Gramsci, the long march through the institutions, and the fact that Marxists realized that there would be no workers of the world unite, that there would not be a working class revolution. So they are now trying to bring about a revolution based on race primarily, cultural Marxism. And as Frenchie pointed out, the idea is to create such chaos that people will be looking around for a solution, and that solution will very well be a totalitarian form of Marxism. If you know your World War II history, your World Wars I and II history, after World War I, Germany was in such chaos that somebody who really probably could have never been hired as a house painter came along and became the ruler of Germany and Europe, and just about turned the whole world upside down because he knew how to thrive on chaos. But the thriving has to have the chaos first, and that's what an awful lot of these things are aimed at. Now, the guy who did the shooting at Uvalde, Texas, is not part of some gigantic chaos. But the whole social fabric that's coming apart that I mentioned earlier, the purpose of that is to create guys like the guy who did the shootout in Uvalde. That's the purpose of it all. Okay, man, is a long demi-economy today, huh? So let me see what I got on the card. Friday I had a lean card. Today I've got a heavy card. I start out with Kool-Aid versus Vicente Blas Tyron. And then I've got Pete Scrow versus Vanessa Williams, Beto versus Robert, Tom Woods versus eco-fascists, France versus Russia, environmental wackos versus the United States Marine Corps, Kyle versus GPA, load shedding versus the legislature, Weir versus Guam, the Supremes versus the Waterworks, and the racist versus Uvalde. So a lot of stuff. Because I didn't get very far on Friday's card, and then a lot of stuff came up today. Well, of course, I'm not going to spend much time talking about systemic racism. I think everybody pretty well understands what I mean when I mention systemic racism, the agenda versus the truth. And then I go into the announcements for meetings and see who screwed up again. This time it's the first on the list is the Committee on Decolonization. Of course, when Guam becomes independent, we won't need any open government law, will we? Well, because the right people will be running the government. So the Committee on Decolonization makes that old error, new business, old business, with no description as to what the new business is. Bad. And then we've got the Guam Election Commission, who usually does a great job on this. Maria Pangilinan usually has her stuff together. But even she made a mistake this time. Item 13, new business. No description of the new business. And then the Visitor Bureau, of course, makes that same new business error, which they seem to want to make every time they have a meeting. And the grand champion of all is Career Tech High Academy Charter School. 7 items on the agenda: call to order, approval of minutes, unfinished business, new business, executive session, adjournment. Looks like a law school examination. How many violations of the open government law can you find in this one notice? No! It's unfortunate. And yeah, that's it on that part of the agenda. So we go on to Kyle, as you were, Kool-Aid versus Vicente Blas. What's his name? Tyrone. Yeah, Vicente Blas Tyrone. He is going to set us straight on Bill 291. This is, and the title of this one is the Kool-Aid versus Vicente Blas Tyrone. Bill 291, known as the Heartbeat Act, is a piece of legislation that prohibits abortion as soon as a physician can detect a fetal heartbeat, unless the fetal development poses a health risk to the person. Now, when he says the person, he probably thinks he's talking about the mother, but that's not what he said. What is there to say at this point? At a point where we've distanced ourselves from our cultural roots as a matrifocal society. That's a new word for me. I know matrilineal, matrilocal, matriarchal, matrifocal. I don't know. I can probably figure out what it means. We stand at a crossroads, discerning who we are and what we stand for as an island, as a people. Sounds like this guy's writing a speech here. He wants to hear what it sounds like. We fail to understand the misogyny that permeates our shores, and as a result, we draft legislations like this. It's not legislations, it's legislation, Kyle, as you are, Vicente, which yet again puts burden on people with uteri in a society and system that was built to harm them. The bill inhibits bodily autonomy and explicitly demonstrates the way society values clumps of cells more than our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers, and all people with uteri.
Advanced clumps of cells.
Yes, uteri, U-T-E-R-I, which is apparently the Latin plural of uterus.
Oh, not birthing persons?
Uh-huh. According to Jennifer Kearns, an obstetrician gynecologist at the University of California, San Francisco, the argument that fetal heartbeat is present at 6 weeks is a vague and problematic reference for what is actually a group of cells with electrical activities. Kern then goes on to note that this activity is far from any matured and developed cardiovascular system. Yet we are giving these cells more rights than people with uteri who are alive and suffering in our society. A much more effective piece of legislation would be to combat systemic issues like gender wage gap or poverty.
63 million sounds systemic to me.
It does. We must ask ourselves, why is it that as of 2018, women identifying people, boy, this guy's really drunk the Kool-Aid, right? Women identifying people on Guam were paid just 59 cents of every dollar their male identifying colleagues earned. Not men and women, but male identifying and female identifying.
I'm going to need a flow chart here.
Yeah. Why is it more than 2,500 households on Guam live below the poverty line? It's because of Bill 291, obviously. Perhaps shifting our attention to these issues would make people with uteri more inclined to see pregnancy through. However, we find some of our leaders consumed with agendas enveloped in religious beliefs that...
Well, say what again?
Yeah.
Consumed with agendas, enveloped in religious beliefs?
Uh-huh.
Like this letter?
Exactly. Though resonating with a lot of people on our island, also exclude those who follow different paths of spirituality and or no path of faith. As I was watching testimonies being given in support of this bill, there were numerous references to Judeo-Christian scripture and God. But we must realize that such arguments, though meaningful to some, also hold no weight or validity in the lives of others, and therefore should not weigh the beliefs of officials who were elected to serve all who call our island home. As a cis man. Yeah. Now, Vicente wants you to know that he is a cis man. As a cis man, I will never understand what it's like to have my bodily autonomy stripped away. I will never comprehend how a clump of potential life takes precedence over my established existence in this world. Therefore, I stand in solidarity with my sisters, my aunties, my mom, my grandmothers, my ancestors, and all whose bodies have been politicized and marginalized, because we all deserve the choice and freedom to do what we want with the bodies we have. All right, let's take a short break and we'll come back to Mr. Tyrone.
Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are. Seventh inning stretch? No.
Halftime show after this.
Halftime show after this.
Just enough time to say, we'll see you on the other side.
Okay. Okay, I've got Bistra on line one. Bistra's one of our favorite phone callers here. Bistra, usually, no.
Hi, good afternoon, Bob.
Hang on a second, Bister. We got to go through the halftime show first, huh?
All right.
Hey, I'm sorry, Bister. We'll pick you up right after the halftime show, okay?
Not a problem.
Okay.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
A day for remembering. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. President Biden honoring those who made the ultimate sacrifice in a Memorial Day address at Arlington National Cemetery.
Still today, we are free because they were brave. We live by the light and the flame of liberty that they kept burning. And so a part of them is still with us no matter how long ago we lost them.
The president also visited Uvalde, Texas over the weekend, scene of last week's school shooting.
Biden privately grieved with a shattered community in Uvalde, Texas, telling reporters upon his return there's some hope for a bipartisan gun control agreement in Congress, encouraged by a push from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell to Texas Senator John Cornyn to find common ground with Democrats. The administration increasingly defensive over pressure for Biden to act unilaterally, refusing some network requests for officials to appear on Sunday shows, saying it's on Congress to act. Biden said his executive powers have limits.
Fox's Jackie Heinrich at the White House. Today marks 1 week since the shootings at the Robb Elementary School in Uvalde left 19 students and 2 teachers dead. 11 funerals are scheduled this week. Canada could impose a national freeze on handguns and a mandatory buyback of assault-style weapons if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau gets his way. He's called for legislation that would ban the sale, transfer, and import of handguns and would take guns away from anyone convicted of domestic violence or stalking. A Florida teenager arrested Sunday after posting a picture on social media in which he appeared to be holding guns, and he captioned it, "Siri, directions to the nearest school." The weapons turned out to be non-lethal airsoft guns, but the sheriff in Hillsborough County says this type of threat is unacceptable. The teen is now free on bond. He could be facing up to 15 years in prison. America is listening to Fox News.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team.
Hafa-day, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns a property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has a management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We're here to help.
The Federal Reserve is starting to increase interest rates to fight inflation, but they're still so low, making it the perfect time to refinance your home, to lower your rate, and perhaps take advantage of its increased value to put some cash in your pocket during these uncertain times. Cash that you can have the freedom to access when you want, where you want, with your Bank Pacific Visa debit card. Lower your rate, put cash in your pocket. Access your cash when you want, where you want, with your Visa debit card. For Elizabeth branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, credit conditions apply.
Which the White House says is the president's top economic priority. The two will also discuss the state of the U.S. and global economy, working to transition from a historic economic recovery to stable, steady growth that works for working families. Their Oval Office meeting comes as Americans are feeling the steep rise of the cost of groceries and gas, and as experts share concerns that the Federal Reserve's efforts to combat inflation by raising interest rates could tip the economy into a recession. Kristen Goodwin, Fox News.
Leaders of the European Union nations imposing a near-total ban on Russian oil. EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen.
This is very important. Thanks to this, Council should now be able to finalize a ban on almost 90% of all Russian oil imports by the end of the year.
But that's pushing oil prices higher. Texas crude cresting $118 a barrel in Tuesday trading. The state of Georgia, as of today, rolling back one of its COVID assistance programs.
Georgia had been directing extra food stamp allowances throughout much of the pandemic, but the last round was not renewed by Governor Brian Kemp. That benefit will expire today. Throughout much of the COVID pandemic, the increased benefit directed by Georgia but coming through the Federal Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, provided extra food to more than 750,000 people living in Georgia, working out to about $95 extra worth of food to each participating Georgia family each month. Eben Brown, Fox News.
A big fire in Omaha, Nebraska, forcing evacuations just south of the downtown area Monday. The fire at a plant that makes chemicals used to seal concrete. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarty Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Kings Guam World Tennis Tour, presented by GTA, is bringing international tennis back to Guam. 4 weeks of international play will swing into action with 2 weeks of juniors, followed by 2 weeks of pros, May the 15th through June 12th. The Guam National Tennis Federation will host world-ranked players who will be coming to Guam from all over the world. Netters will compete for ranking points and cash to improve their position among the world's best. Matches will be played daily at the Guam National Tennis Center in Harmon, starting May 15th through June 12th. Special thanks to our platinum sponsors, Dimension Systems, New Gen, American Medical Center, and Morico Equipment.
So here we are on the big halftime show that occurs 3/4 of the way through the show today. But I was saying I've been a little mixed up. Telling time is not our strong suit here on Tall Tales. There was an interesting post on that I was looking at during the halftime show from Margaret Stocchio, who wanted to know, what is a cis man? C-I-S man. And it used to be everyone knew what a man was and what a woman was. We didn't need any modifiers in front of the word. Supreme Court justices knew the difference, etc., but not anymore. So a cis man is a man who is not pretending to be a woman. He could be queer, he could be straight, but he's not pretending to be a woman. That's what a cis man is, and that's what this guy claims he is. I'll get back to Mr. Tyrone as soon as I'm going to give Bistra a little time here to talk in terms of the destruction of America. Good afternoon again, Bistra.
Hey, good afternoon, Bob. I just wanted to kind of pick up where you left off on the issue that there is an agenda to destroy America, and I kind of agree with that statement because I've been watching the development of government policies for a while now, and unfortunately, it's true. And to my personal belief is it's kind of like a fluid situation that's been happening since the beginning of the Cold War. You know, both sides were trying to influence each other via cultural wars. I'm not sure if you're familiar with this gentleman called Yuri Bezmenov. I kind of found him on some archive on YouTube. This guy was talking about the KGB attempts to infiltrate America back in 1983. And a lot of people discredited him, saying, oh, you know, he was never in KGB and so forth. But put this aside, what he was talking about was quite clear, and actually we're seeing it right now when it comes to doing that cultural war and demoralizing a society. I don't know Hello?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Sorry. It's kind of like clicking, so I wasn't sure if I'm online. It's kind of being apparent that there's this attempt to demoralize society by including new values that are in a complete opposite direction of what America is used to. You were talking about different issues, but to me, the agenda is very clear. The society needs to be disabled by whatever means necessary, and unfortunately, it's through issues that are very near and dear, specifically to those who have the Judeo-Christian faith. And I don't know about you, but America, last time I heard, was based on those Judeo-Christian values, and unfortunately now this foundation has been shaken down.
Yeah, I agree, Bristra, and I rue the day that it happens too.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay, I agree with you, Bristra, and I think that the abandonment of religion is something that we're going to really regret as time goes on.
I do agree with you, because when I was growing up in a society that shunned any kind of religion, they kind of left the Orthodox Christian Church in Russia and Eastern Europe, including Bulgaria. They left them autonomous. However, nothing outside of the church walls or the monasteries was ever discussed regarding God, regarding morals that were taught in the Bible. Actually, I remember this one time during Easter. I was probably first or second grader, and I just took the newly painted Easter eggs, put them in a kind of like a ensemble, and tried to paint them. And my sister just came over and said, "No, don't do that. Don't ever show this to anyone." And, a child's disbelief, well, what are you talking about? And she said, no, if someone sees you in school, if they see that picture, you're going to get expelled. I mean, that's how bad it was, no discussion of religion, and absolutely nothing that had any, value embedded in that religion. Although, on the upper hand, we were being taught in school that, in fact, the church saved Bulgaria when it came to saving its culture, language, and religion during the Ottoman presence, or we call it the Ottoman Empire rule. So it was very, very unique kind of perception to me to witness, where on the one hand you're being taught, yeah, religion is good, but then on the other hand, absolutely not, do not do that. So yes, I agree that if we discount any kind of moral grounds and values based on some kind of faith, I mean, it shouldn't be even just Judeo-Christian. It should be anything that has to do with be a good person, believe in this one higher power that created everything there is in the universe, above and below. I mean, there's so many people with different spiritual values nowadays, but at least there's some kind of moral compass. If we lose that moral compass, we're lost. And there will be a complete anarchy, and I just don't even want to imagine what time my future grandchildren will live in.
Well,
so that's what I wanted to say, basically, in a nutshell. I could talk more about it, but I know that you're constrained in time.
Well, I always appreciate your calls, Bistra, and you bring a unique perspective here, having lived in a communist country at one time, correct?
Yes, that is correct, and I did have a chance to meet quite a few of Eastern European folks who were either born or escaped the regime, and I have not met one so far that did not share my opinion that we cannot even recognize what America is turning into, and we all see the propaganda that's coming, and we all see the deliberate attempts to destroy the society. It's not just my opinion. I share the opinion of numerous other folks, and unfortunately, we, the immigrants, we have to be the ones to kind of stand up and say, hey, you guys, wake up and smell the roses, because if you don't believe us, those folks that we were there, we were doing it, we lived through it, and we know what it looks like, we know what it smells like, we know what it tastes like. If you don't believe us, you are beyond saving. So please make sure that we save all the moral values and all the constitutional values that are the anchor of the democracy in the United States of America, the one very power that was placed by the people for the people. If we destroy all that, really, truly, it's just like what Ronald Reagan said. It's the last stand. If we lose it, there's nowhere else to go.
Well, Mister, I'm really glad you're here to help us, because as you mentioned, you know, it's people that are immigrants that are really understand and are really fighting the good fight. So I appreciate that.
Yes, and that's why, Bob, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. I don't know if you've heard, but I will be running for senator this election season, just because I know that exactly what you said, my perspective can be very helpful in avoiding certain situations in the future that I believe are coming.
Okay, so let's wrap this up by saying Biba Bistra. Okay, we're going to Churchill Downs? Okay.
Hafaday, Patsy Gogri from Security Title here with information about what a title company does. The title side of our business determines who owns the property and guarantees your ownership with a title insurance policy. The escrow side acts as an independent third party, managing the transfer of money and documents between the buyer, seller, lenders, and others. Security Title has the management of real estate closings down to a science. Give us a call. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Okay, so here we are, Churchill Downs, another 6 furlongs, and I'll be crossing the finish line heading for that big debate that starts at 5:30. The 3 gubernatorial candidates. Should be very interesting, almost as interesting as Tall Tales, which is a really, really high standard, of course. I just wanted to wrap up here on this item on the card, Kool-Aid versus Vicente Blas Tyron. Who and obviously the Kool-Aid won this fight, but I'll take it down to the end again. He said, "I stand in solidarity with my sisters, my aunties, my mom, my grandmothers, my ancestors, all whose body have been politicized and marginalized, because we all deserve the choice and freedom to do what we want with the bodies we have." Now, there's a sentence here telling us a little bit about Mr. Tyron. And here's everything you wanted to know about Mr. Tyron. Vicente Pecciardo Blas Tyron, Familian Eka Zanbaliga, attends Colorado College, where he's studying feminist and gender studies, race, ethnicity, and migration studies, and is on the pre-law track. So boy, he's really cut a nice path for himself. He's into feminist and gender studies. Yeah, well, okay. And the box score tomorrow, it'll be Kool-Aid beat Vicente Blas Tyron pretty badly. Okay, next item on the card is Pete Scrow versus Vanessa Williams. And I think you all know who Vanessa Williams is. And this is a story that ran in AP News, Honolulu. Women from the remote U.S. territories of Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands will likely have to travel farther than other Americans to terminate a pregnancy if the Supreme Court overturns a precedent that established a national right to abortion in the United States. Hawaii is the closest U.S. state where abortion is legal under local law. Even so, Honolulu is 3,800 miles away, about 50% farther than Boston is from Los Angeles. For a lot of people who are seeking abortion care, it might as well be on the moon. Vanessa L. Williams, an attorney who is active with the group People for Choice. Here's something else that Vanessa L. Williams said. It's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. That's Vanessa Williams. Going on with the article, it's already difficult to get an abortion in Guam, a small, heavily Catholic island of about 170,000 people south of Japan. The last physician who performed surgical abortions there retired in 2018. 2 Guam licensed doctors who live in Hawaii see patients virtually and mail them pills for chemical abortions. And we know who to give credit to that to, none other than Calamity Jane. But this alternative is available only until 11 weeks gestation. Now there's a possibility even this limited telehealth option will disappear. A recently leaked draft opinion indicated that the Supreme Court could overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade decision and allow individual states to ban abortion. About half of them would likely do so, abortion rights advocates say. Oklahoma got a head start Wednesday when its governor signed a measure prohibiting all abortions with few exceptions. All 3 U.S. territories in the Pacific, Guam, the Northern Mariana Islands, and America and Samoa, also have the potential to adopt prohibitions, according to a 2019 report by the Center for Reproductive Rights. None have legal protections for abortion, and they could revive old abortion laws or enact new ones, the report said. Traveling to the nearest states where abortion is allowed, Hawaii or the West Coast, would be prohibitive for many women. The nonstop flight from Guam to Honolulu takes nearly 8 hours. Only one commercial airline flies the route. A recent online search showed the cheapest ticket going for $1,500 round trip in May. Williams said many Guam residents need time off work, a hotel room, and a rental car to travel for an abortion, adding more costs. Hawaii legalized abortion in 1970, 3 years before Roe. The state today allows abortion until a fetus would be viable outside the room. After that, it's legal if a patient's life or health is in danger. Flying to a country in Asia that allows abortion would be quicker, but several reproductive rights advocates on Guam say they haven't heard of anyone doing that. For one, it would require a passport, which many don't have, said Kiana Yabut of the group Famalawan Rights. Without Roe, Guam could revert to an abortion ban dating to 1990. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled the law unconstitutional in 1992, but it has never been repealed. James Canto, a Guam Deputy Attorney General, agreed under questioning by a Guam senator this month that existing abortion laws in various states and territories would be the law of the land if Roe were overturned. But Alexis Colby Molinas, Deputy Director of the Reproductive Freedom at the American Civil Liberties Union, said the Ninth Circuit permanently enjoyed the 1990 law, meaning Guam's Attorney General would have to ask the local district court to lift an injunction
Wait, what?
Would have to ask the local district court to lift an injunction to begin enforcing it. No, doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
No, would have to dissolve the injunction. I suppose they're saying enforcing the law. Okay. The 32-year-old statute made it a felony for a doctor to perform the procedure except to save a woman's life or prevent grave danger to her health as certified by 2 independent physicians, or to end an ectopic pregnancy, which is a dangerously abnormal pregnancy that develops outside the uterus. It made it a misdemeanor for a woman to have an abortion or for anyone to ask or advise her to have one. The 21-member unicameral legislature unanimously approved the ban after then Archbishop Anthony Apparan threatened in a television interview to excommunicate any Catholic senator who voted against it. Now let's just stop there for a second. This was back when Anthony Apparan was still trying to be a bishop.
1990.
Yeah, and then second, we know that it doesn't take a bishop to execute someone. The mere advocacy of or the support of abortion operates, I'm going to say sua sponte, to excommunicate. But of course, if you're pro-abortion, you want to hang as much black crepe on the Catholic Church as you possibly can.
Low-hanging fruit.
All but one of the senators was Catholic, but most senators said they were unaware of the threat. Guam's legislature has been considering adding additional measures to restrict abortion. This month, it held hearings on a bill modeled after a new Texas law that bans abortion once a cardiac activity is detected, usually around 6 weeks. The Texas law, which has withstood legal challenges so far, leaves enforcement up to private citizens through lawsuits instead of criminal prosecutions. I'm going to stop here. I'm not finished with the article. I'll finish it on Monday, but I've got somebody in the green room. I'd like to get that person. It's another Joe. Another Joe asks, unborn, do they still enjoy civil rights? Another Joe, no, the unborn do not enjoy civil rights, and that's kind of the hidden battle. Because if the courts ever came down and said that baby in the mother's womb is a person, then the baby in the mother's womb would enjoy civil rights, including the right to not be deprived of life without due process of law. Right?
Yeah. Uncle Bob. So does that mean any chance that Vanessa Williams will put in her report as the chairman of the committee for civil rights that's something that they need to look into?
Well, given her statement, which I'll read for you one more time, it's impossible to separate our choice of whether and when to have children from every other choice in our lives. I would see it more in character for her to say women on Guam are being denied their civil rights because they can't have abortion on demand. And that's a denial of civil rights. That would be, if she went the other way, she'd be playing against type, another Joe.
Oh well. It's such a shame and sad. Okay, Bob. Let's hope that some act of God, divine intervention, that changes in these leaders start to recognize that unborn babies have civil rights. All right, Bob. Thanks. I'll keep listening.
I'm talking to another Joe. Okay, I got just a couple minutes to go here. Finishing up this article, Jane Flores, the ever-popular Jane Flores, director of the Bureau of Women's Affairs, a government agency, believes residents should still have access to medication abortions from off island if Roe is overturned. But she wonders whether the legislature might outlaw that too. I certainly hope so. Okay, here we are.